Okay, do we have any changes to tonight's agenda?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, you've all received the minutes from our meeting on February 13th. If there are no questions or comments, I'll accept the motion to receive those minutes.
So moved.
Motion from Councilman McCoy, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. You also received the minutes from the planning session on January 22nd, 26th. If there are no questions or comments regarding those, I'll accept the motion to receive them.
So moved.
Motion from Councilman McCoy, is there a second?
I second.
Councilman Bradley seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. Okay. Tonight is real estate tax appeals. Do we have anybody here tonight for?
Yes, sir. We have 2 people here for tax appeals. We have first Mr. Jeffrey Stevens, 811 Perkins Street.
Okay, Mr. Stevens? Please come down to the mic.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is in regards to, I guess, 811 Perkins Street. I guess at the time in which the assessment was done, this was a building that was in rentable condition. Since, I guess, me getting ownership of the property, it's no longer livable. It was on fire, total loss. So I was wondering if maybe council, mayor would send someone out, maybe consider reassessing the value on the property.
Okay, thank you. We'll give that to Mr. Pender. We'll take a view of it. We'll bring it back.
Yeah, so what'll happen tonight, you'll state your case for appeal. You'll provide any information you have to Kathy Anger, who's our credit manager, and then she'll work with our tax assessors, Mr. Pender, and he'll make a recommendation to council, which would be brought back to council for a final decision. And Kathy will notify anyone who makes an appeal of that date and time, so you can be present if you choose to.
All right, thanks for considering the matter.
All right,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Can we ask a question in reference?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. So is there any intention of putting it back, rebuilding? And if there is there kind of a time frame around that?
I'm leaning towards not. Leaning towards
You're just
not.
gonna demo it?
Yeah, eventually I want to put twins, redevelop the whole thing, but
Okay, all right, thank you,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
you're welcome.
Second at this time is Mr. Perlmutter.
Mr. Perlmutter?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good evening. The property that I'm interested in having relooked at, the taxes or the power plant site. It's a very high tax bill presently. I think you're aware it's a brownfield property. And we've gotten some very large, costly estimates for that property to develop. So I'd like the assessor to relook at the property at this time.
Okay, we will give it to him. We'll report back.
That's everyone at this time. If anybody else comes in, I'll let you know.
Okay, just so council knows, they have until 8 o'clock, so if someone does come, we'll interrupt the meeting and let that go forward. All right, at this time, I'll call up Chief Kraft to introduce our new City of Seaford Police employee.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Tonight, I'm happy to introduce you to Tyler Phillips. I don't think you can miss Tyler. He's a little bit taller than me. Tyler was hired on February 4th of this year to fill a vacant spot in our communication technician specialist 1 position. And Tyler has been doing a great job. He also has 14 years of experience with the Blaze Fire Department, previous lieutenant. Now he's a captain with the fire department. And he brings a great deal of public safety experience. And we're happy to introduce him to council tonight. Tyler? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Always love to meet our new employees and for the public to get that opportunity as well. All right, we're going to go ahead at this time and close our regular meeting and open up our public. Can you go through public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment. I apologize. We have nobody here for public comment?
Okay.
Okay. All right, next, we're going to close our regular meeting, open up the public hearing. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Newcomb.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good evening. So for the public hearing this evening, we have, in partnership with the Chesapeake Conservancy, seeking approval of the revisions to the master plan for the Oyster House Park located at 201 South Cannon Street, Seaford, Delaware, tax map and parcel number 431-7.00-23.00. I'd like to introduce Mr. Conway Bristow and Mr. Matt Spong. They are with the Harbor Group. Those are our consultants, as well as representing our partner in this project, Ms. Susan Morishell, is representing the Chesapeake Conservancy. So before they come up, just wanted to give everybody a little bit of background. I know most of you are familiar with the project, but a lot has transpired over several years. So if you will remember, the city acquired this property. The Conservancy acquired the property, and then they gave it back to the city in June of 2018. We then began the process of creating the master plan. We went through several public hearings. The first one was August 13th. We actually did that here, and then we put it live on the website with the preliminary plan. We kept that open till August 20th, collected those comments. Those comments actually are in the master plan in the appendix. The master plan was finally approved by the committee February 12th of 2020, and then ultimately by City Council in February 25th of 2020. In July of 2022, the city was able to acquire a federal earmark of $1.2 million for the relocation of the interceptor sewer piece that runs through that property. As it notes in the master plan that is needed and necessary to be completed before any of the work of phase 2 can be done. And then in October of last year, council agreed to enter into an agreement with Chesapeake Conservancy to go ahead and revise the master plan, because as time has gone on, some of the components don't necessarily fit, and we've had some different conversations, and in order to make everything work with the components and the sewer, this living document needed to be changed first. So that's where we are, and that's how we got here today. So I will turn it over to Conway or Matt, whoever wants to come up.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Good evening.
As Tricia said, I'm Conway Bristow, landscape architect with Harbor Group over in Lewis, Delaware. So thank you for that background. As you stated, we've come together to reassess how we're going to attack this master plan. We want to enhance the gateway to downtown, improve the access to the land. Phase 1, through Matt, they built a beautiful boardwalk. So we just want to keep building off of that. And that includes providing the stormwater solutions from Cannon Street, Pearl Street, and then creating, places for the citizens to enjoy the waterfront. So the key changes to this plan, we got rid of the structured amphitheater in lieu of a rolling green, the big open lawn area. We have a 10-foot wide path going from end to end, connecting the site for both emergency egress, utility, and pedestrian use. We had to take that new sanitary sewer into play, along with the electrical plan. And then, of course, stormwater management plays a big role. Here's a little schematic plan showing the circulation, the solid blue lines that exist in the boardwalk. The blue dots are future circulation pedestrian-wise, and then the yellow would be that utility path and egress, and then we have the pink line, that's that new sewer, and then the orange is the electric. Here's a little bit cleaner of a plan for you. You have the big lawn there in the middle, and then coming off of Pearl Street and Cannon, we have 2 turnarounds. Those are going to be used for ADA access, kayak drop-off, equipment drop-off, and then at the end of Pearl Street, you can see there's a pavilion we're hoping to make sure that architecture is in honor of the original Oyster House, just to tie that site together back to the roots. There was some grade we had to look at, so there's different ramps that go down from that parking area, stairs coming down from the parking area on Cannon Street, and that sets you up into that round paved area that could be used for a show. You could have presentations out there, and it's also an opportunity too for a good focal point to help draw people in from Cannon Street. And going further up, we just have that 10-foot wide path. Just going to be a bunch of native plantings, just to really soften up, and then a set of stairs coming on I think that's Church Street. Here's a quick sketch of the cross section from Pearl Street down through that pavilion, just to help kind of express that grade. As you can see down by the water, we're at about 5 feet, and then we have to get up to around 9.5, and then it cuts quickly back up to about 23. And there's a little artistic rendering of what the plan could turn out to be. So where that truck's parked is where the ADA parking would be. Make sure that paved surface is ADA accessible down to the dock, so everybody can, you know, keep fishing, take their kayaks down easily. And then the amphitheater lawn softens up a little bit. We have about 3 to 5 feet of grade there, so you can still have a place to sit on the lawn and watch the show, and a big open lawn area for kids to play on. And there's just a little bird's eye view from above showing the connection of the existing dock up to Pearl Street, and give a good sense of that retaining wall as well.
I'd like to invite Susan up to make a couple comments from the Conservancy.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, how are you?
Doing well.
Thanks for having me back. I think you all know, but I think it is worth repeating, that I am Seaford's liaison from the Chesapeake Conservancy.
That's right.
I'm also a Delaware resident. The Conservancy has, you all know, the Conservancy has partnered with you all with this property, with the Orchard House Park and its development from the very beginning, from land protection, fundraising for that, but also fundraising for planning and developing the early stages of Orchard House Park. And Mr. Mayor, you received a letter from Joel Dunn, who's the Conservancy CEO, and also from Randall Aramore, I believe. Yes. And both of them expressed their support for the master plan, the revision of that. And their letters both acknowledged, I believe, I'm more familiar with Joel's letter, or Mr. Dunn's letter, that Orchard House Park is full of history and heritage and offers opportunities for outdoor recreation. And they look forward to how that can grow in the future. The Conservancy looks forward to continue its participation and partnership with the city and turning Orchard House Park into a waterfront gem that serves both Seaford and becomes a shiny, brighter spot for the entire Chesapeake watershed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And just for the record, both letters are included in your presentation materials for tonight.
Okay, are there any questions from council?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
The open green space area, what is the capacity of that area? So if that's, the amphitheater's there, we're having some type of live event, like what does that hold? How many people does that hold?
I don't know that we've ever calculated that, and I'm not sure if Mr. Spong or Mr. Conway want to
Take a whack.
venture a guess, but it's relatively large, and it would depend on whether it's, you know, people bring seats, you know, lawn chairs, blankets, or if it's kind of standing room only for, you know, a concert or something. Yeah. I believe our initial plan with the structured amphitheater was approximately 75. Do I remember that correctly, Mr. Spong?
Yes, but then when we revised it to the last revision, it was about twice that. And this would probably be closer to 150 or
Right.
so. Because as you can see, the area that's devoted to the open space is probably 3 times the size as it was before, because of the way it was configured.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. I think the only thing that concerns me, or the thing that I would question around this, would be parking, right? So I mean, I feel that the community is really wants this, and I can see some type of event and 150 people showing up. So I guess the only thing that concerns me, if there's an opportunity around that area, if we can acquire or do something, I think parking, in my opinion, parking could be a concern.
Well, as we had
Mr.
said-
Spong, would you come up to the mic, please?
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Matt Spong, registered landscape architect. We had the privilege of working with you on the first master plan. So there's about 65 parking places that are in the church parking lot and the museum parking lot. But then there's some discussion, which we probably should have mentioned, of Cannon Street, reconfiguring that and perhaps doing some diagonal parking. So if that was done, I'm sure you could get another 20, 30 or so parking places, but that's kind of beyond the scope of our original project for this. And hopefully, people would park and walk downtown, because it's not really that far.
That's right.
Like if you parked at City Hall or anywhere else, like when you have the River Festival, there's hundreds of people that come into town and seem to be able to be accommodated.
Right.
So I think that could happen pretty easily.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from council? Are there any questions from the public? Okay, if not, then we'll go ahead and close our public hearing and reopen our regular meeting. Is anybody here for tax appeals? Did anybody come in or? Okay, I just thought I would check while we had a break. Okay, and we'll go on to new business, one on just reconsidering the Oyster House Park Master Plan. If no one has any questions, I will accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the revisions to the Oyster House Park Master Plan as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We look forward to, wouldn't it be amazing to have a couple hundred people down there along the waterfront? I just think that's awesome. So thank you for sticking to it, all of you that have been, I know there's more people here that have fingers into this or sort of bump up against it, but all of us are going to benefit from this park building out into the future. So we appreciate all the support and if you're like me, the patience to get it this far and keep it going. So thank you so much. All right, next we have Mrs. Newcomer's going to walk us through this sewer relocation.
All right. So next is a request from Mr. Perlmutter to extend the sewer relocation cost assistance agreement for the residents of River Place Phase 3, which is Building 4, which is set to expire on March 3rd, 2024. Mr. Perlmutter is here representing that project. Just to remind council what this was, the original agreement was approved by City Council in 2021, March of 2021, that with a sunset date, as mentioned, of March 3rd. It was revised in April of 2021 because at that time, I think when the original request came in, he was planning on doing both buildings at the same time. It was revised to only do building number 3, which then revised the original incentive, which was 100. The original incentive, just to remind you, was to accept the responsibility of paving South North Street and a fee reduction not to exceed $175,000, which included the cost of paving. That was then modified, as I mentioned, in April of 2021 to recalculate the incentive, applying $87,500 to building 3, which he took advantage of, and then the $87,500 for Building 4. He has applied for his DDD large grant reservation, so that is in the process with a plan of construction for the building to begin in the fall of this year. So he reached out to have this extended for another 2-year period so that it would coincide with Building 4's project plan.
Okay, council, are there any questions regarding this extension? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland? Mr. Mayor, make a motion to the request from Mr. David Perlmutter to extend the sewer relocation cost assistance agreement for residents at River Place Phase 3, Building Number 4, for an additional 2 years until March 3rd, 2026, as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Henderson seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. All right, you're still up on the EPA consent
Going
issue.
anywhere for a while. So the next item is also a request from Mr. David Perlmutter to request assistance from Sussex County to participate in an EPA grant program for the residences at River Place Phase 4, which is known as the City of Seaford's power plant. So the backstory on that is we met, along with Mr. Perlmutter, with folks from the Environmental Protection Agency. As you heard him refer to the property earlier this evening, it is considered a brownfield site based on its original use, so there are contaminants. There are funds available to remediate this contaminant. But in order to do so, you must be a city, a county, or a nonprofit agency, which Mr. Perlmutter is not. So he is ineligible to apply for or accept those grant funds. We, as the previous owner of that property, are also ineligible. So we could not be the city that could act on his behalf. So we had preliminary conversations with Sussex County to see if they had willingness to work on this project with us and with Mr. Perlmutter. I think we would all agree that it's advantageous to see that site get cleaned up and be able to see him revitalize that. And the county was generally receptive with what we put forward to them, and they had the same desire to see the riverfront redevelop, and then they know what that's going to mean to Sussex County as a whole. But they were adamant in that if they were to do this, getting involved in this, that it couldn't cost the county anything. They wanted to be made whole, and so they also asked for the city's support in this. So that they remanded us to not remanded us, but we've brought it back to council to say this is the path that we're recommending, and then ultimately would like to be able to take this back and start the conversation with the county. Certainly this is not saying the county has accepted that they're going to do this. This is saying that the county is open to discussions. So we would try to help and work alongside with Mr. Perlmutter to do that and see if we can't possibly move the needle. Just to give you an example, of the dollar amount, they explained to us that there are the potential grants available up to $5 million. And remediation of this type of a site obviously is going to be quite costly. So we want to try to help as best we can. And I can answer any questions, and Mr. Perlmutter is here as well, and certainly can answer any questions.
Okay, Councilman McCoy?
We keep using the term brownfield for people watching this who may
Want
not be
a
aware.
definition? I certainly can do that for you.
a
Yep,
little
so
more,
a brownfield is defined as it's almost everywhere in every community as an eyesore community that has contamination from ways people used it in the past. Examples of what a brownfield site, other than the power plant, would be a former gas station, former industrial sites, dry cleaner sites, waste piles of the sort. And Mr. Perlmutter is actually very familiar with working on brownfield sites. The site where Residences of River Place was also a brownfield site.
Thank you.
Other question? Yes, Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Trish, you talk about the cost, the lifts to come in and clean that out. Can we talk a little bit more on that? I saw a couple, and the reason I'm asking, I saw a couple things on social media tonight, and I think a lot of our residents are under the assumption that it's a quick fix, right? That Mr. Perlmutter's gonna start tomorrow, and we're gonna go in and we're gonna clean it up, and we're gonna
Correct.
convert it into a
Yep, so what,
nice family bar area for people to come down.
what you're referring to that was on social media tonight was an interview that I did earlier today with Jack Ford from WBOC. They saw that on the agenda and they wanted the same information. What is this? Why are you doing this?
Right.
And so we explained, just as I've explained to you, but it is a long process.
What kind of dollar amount would you, if you guesstimated to do a project like this, what would you guess it at?
Mr.
I mean, this is not an easy undertaking.
This is not an easy undertaking, but we've owned the property for some time. So we've started with our engineers, Brightfield, and we've started the process. So we know what it's going to take to get done. So the process has started, and the reason it's kind of stopped is because it's going to take significant dollars. And we believe it's going to be somewhere in seven-figure range to get it done. You know, if we can work an agreement out with the county, Brightfield's on board, they're ready to push it forward, Denrec's on board with it, and it's a matter of, you know, if we can obtain those monies. Another thing that Trish didn't mention as well, if the county takes it over, there's additional monies in the state of Delaware brownfield program versus a private owner like myself. We're limited to $200,000, I believe is the figure, which is what we had at the residences. And most of the monies for that actually went to the third-party consultants, you know, not to do the cleanup. Because the requirements are so strict and stringent, and the reporting that's done, the monitoring that's done. Now we have to put in some monitoring wells that have to be monitored for 5 years. So it's a very expensive process. So if we can work with the county, as Trish said, they don't want to put out any dollars, but by them taking over the property and working with us, there's more dollars locally in the state of Delaware, but we're also going for additional funds with the EPA and the federal.
So, and if that project, let's say hypothetically, or you get those dollars, I mean, is that a project you would start immediately?
Let's start tomorrow. As soon as we knew the dollars were committed,
Right.
we would probably advance it to get the project going.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilman McCoy.
Mr. Perlmutter, one question. When you're working on revitalizing this land, the approval, who ultimately approves and says, okay, the job is done? Okay, what does that process look like?
Of the revitalization?
Yes.
You're talking about for the brownfield?
Yes.
What happens is you have third-party consultants that are watching. They're there on a daily basis, monitoring the construction, writing reports, and they do a whole package that gets sent back to DENREC. And then when it's all said and done, they have to do some other reporting, and then I'm sure there's monitoring wells like we had to do at the residences, and that'll continue. I think it's a 5-year program.
Okay.
That after the remediation is completed and is signed off by DENREC,
Yeah.
I believe it's a 5-year monitoring the site just to make sure that it's what we said and
Yeah.
our consultant said, it's clean and no issues to the property.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So from my perspective, and the city manager may expand on this, but, I mean, we're talking about the county taking part in this program, just similarly to what the city does for a nonprofit to pave a library parking lot. They can't receive grant money, but the city can, so we act as an intermediary to disperse those funds when the contractor is done. So I think that's, and it doesn't cost us any dollars except for some administrative, some paperwork. So I think that's what the county's concern is that they're not going to have to participate monetarily, that they're just going to be the grant holder and disperse funds.
Correct.
Which I think is an awesome idea if they agree to do it, and I hope they do.
We hope they do as well, because if it happens, this project will go, and I think it will be something that Western Sussex County is not going to, or Delaware, it's going to be a major, major difference to this downtown.
Yeah, I have one other, if it's all right. I just want to thank Mr. Perlmutter, you know, for the huge investment that you made in our community. I know it's a great partnership between you and the city, but a lot of people looking at that probably would said, absolutely not. I have no interest and don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But for you to see that and have the vision for that, and really, in my opinion, started this whole revitalization in our downtown as a resident here in the city and as a councilman, I appreciate that and just want to tell you thank you.
You're welcome.
And just one other thing to note, if this process goes through and the county is that conduit, this also opens up for Mr. Perlmutter the opportunity to use the grant assistance program through the University of Delaware. It's a program established by the state to work with counties and municipalities on these really labor-intensive grant writing. So that in and of itself is very, very valuable. So we're hopeful that he'll be able to take advantage of that as well.
Okay. All right, if there are no other questions, I will accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the request from Mr. David Perlmutter to request assistance from Sussex County to participate in an Environmental Protection Agency grant program for the River Place Phase 5 former power plant project as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Councilman Bradley seconds. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Again, this is a first step for this approval, then this will go to Sussex County, and Mr. Perlmutter will work with them to go forward. Okay, great, thank you. All right, next is our pilot workforce incentive program.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is the recommendation from the Economic Development Committee to provide a pilot workforce housing incentive program that was requested by NVR Incorporated. And in the back, Mr. Owen Thomas is here representing NVR. He was here with us last Thursday morning, bright and early, with the Economic Development Committee. And what NVR is asking is to create a hometown incentive for city employees, first responders, education professionals, healthcare professionals, firefighters, and active military personnel. So this conversation with them started, if council remembers, there's a live where you work incentive for city employees. They had heard about that, and they thought that that was something that they could use in their incentive package in selling their homes. They're operating in Muirfield and Muirfield 2 currently. And so we talked through that process a little bit, and staff has had this sort of conversation for a while about we want to assist with development, but we really want to get the incentive to that end user. That workforce housing, that teacher that's just out of college that needs a home. We've heard numerous times from the school district, the high school, about various recruiting issues and workforce housing being one of those. So NVR presented to the Economic Development Committee an incentive to provide a $2,500 closing cost assistance to a buyer. Now, that would be a mortgage through their mortgage company, NVR Mortgage. So the buyer would have to provide an employment verification. So if it's a teacher, let's use a teacher as an example, they would have to have proof that they do work for Seaford School District, and then they would get that up front, obviously, in their due diligence process. And then that teacher would have to be on the loan. They can't just live in the house. They have to be on the loan. At closing, they would receive a $2,500 credit from NVR towards their closing costs. And then in return, NVR, that's where they're asking for us to participate, is to provide that $2,500 incentive back to them. So they would provide us, staff, with the settlement sheet and the employment verification. So we talked about that, and the Economic Development Committee was excited about it, and I thought we would try this as a pilot, as I said, with just NVR through the end of the year, recommending it through the end of the year, not to exceed $60,000. That would be 24 individuals, if possible. And I don't know if any of those of you that want to sit on the committee want to add anything, but I'm certainly
Okay. Any
welcome to.
questions from
Yeah, I have one.
Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Trish, housing, in my opinion, and this is just me, housing is at an all-time high.
It is.
And we're limiting this incentive to a very specific buyer. We're not offering this incentive to everyone. And this $60,000 cost attached to this program, the city would have to fund.
Correct.
Right, and really, to be honest, with utility rates and the cost of services and things continuing to rise, in my opinion, I think this money could be spent in a much better way than just giving it to an incentive to purchase a house when the housing market is on fire to begin with. I think if we're going to do incentives, I'd rather take this money and put it towards the cost of a service than an incentive for someone to buy a house. And that's just my opinion.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, if there are none, we'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, I make the motion to approve the recommendation from the Economic Development Committee to provide a pilot workforce housing incentive program requested by NVR Incorporated and not to exceed $60,000 with a sunset date of December 31st, 2024 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Councilman Bradley seconds. Okay, are there any questions on the motion? We'll do a roll call vote on this one. Councilman Bradley?
Aye.
Yep. Councilman Henderson?
Yes.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not in favor of this, and like I said before in my statement, it's not that I'm taking anything away from first responders. What they do is critical. But I think this isn't fair. We're not offering this incentive to the entire community. We're limiting it who's available for it. So with that being said, I'm not in favor of this.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this passes, and we will move forward, and then we'll bring updates.
So staff does plan to bring this back to council in November with an update of where we are, what has transpired in this pilot process. And certainly at that time, if council feels that it needs to be opened up more citywide, we're happy to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to NVR for taking the lead on this and attempting a pilot program. We'll see how it works and see if we can expand it. Thank you very much. All right, next, are we calling up Director Mears?
Nope, it's
Nope,
still me. I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
So
24 and
sorry,
24.
so sorry. So the next thing that you see on the agenda is also a recommendation from the Economic Development Committee. As the agenda states, to extend the 2024 and 24 program to 50 units as requested by NVR Homes. They did change their request prior to going to the Economic Development Committee. So that is not a request to extend it to 50 units. What they are requesting is the continuance of the 24 and 24 program. So what has happened is we've done this program since 2010, and they have, obviously, as you're aware, have taken great advantage of this program. This was a topic of conversation this past time at our planning session. And so the code department was not clear as to whether or not we were going to continue this program. So they have not issued any credits to date. So we wanted to bring that back before council. NVR actually has already paid full permits for 4 houses. So they're just, in essence, asking to continue. They're showing their support and approval of the program. They're just asking that you would continue that in 24. And we're also saying that this is something the committee, the Economic Development Committee stated that this is something that we do need to put on our radar as staff to come back in November and say, okay, you know, if this passes 24 and 24, so we would come back in November and say, what is your appetite for 25 and 25? Just so that there's not that lapse in time at the beginning of the year and the uncertainty.
And just a point of privilege, Mayor, Ms. Newcomer, could you just talk about if a house qualifies for both programs, how that would be
Yes, thank you.
handled?
So because they have the ability to apply for this in advance, and because the pilot program has been approved, if NVR were to come in tomorrow, get a permit, get the fee waiver, they would get that. When they submit their settlement sheet with all of the correct information for that $2,500, showing the $2,500 credit, we would have an internal process similar to our Clean Hands ordinance, whereby it would go through code department. Code would say, yep, they got $1,700 in their fee waiver. We would back calculate that out of that $2,500. They would not get any more than $2,500 per house, so they wouldn't be double dipping. Thank you for bringing that up.
So from 25 to 50, so you're talking of roughly 100,000.
Say that again?
If you're going from 24 to 25, right? Isn't that what you're asking?
No. I just used next year as an example, 25 and 25.
Could I?
It's, sure, go ahead.
You should ignore the number 50 because that was taken off the table. It's back to 24.
That was their original request, and that changed before they went to the Economic Development Committee.
Councilman McCoy?
You mentioned 4 houses previously that they've built. Can they be affected or impacted retroactively?
Yes.
That is the recommendation from the
Yes.
committee.
Yeah, we would do that.
To retroactive those 4.
If I could, I asked that question at the Economic Development Committee, and no other builders had applied.
10-4.
So no other builders or developers were harmed because they didn't get this. So we felt it was, they were acting in good faith. It's not, it's the city's hesitancy, and they were unclear, or we were unclear as to whether the policy was going to continue. So if enacted, it would be retroactive.
So break this down a little bit. I'm confused. So we're saying it's currently 24,
So,
right, or no?
It is not.
So what is it currently?
It's 0 currently.
we're not administering the program currently. We've been, so every year since 2010, it was 10 in 2010, 11 in 2011, and it follows the year. This year would technically be 24 and 24. We have not instituted those waivers because staff was unclear whether that was council's appetite.
But you're asking for 24 tonight and not 50.
That's correct.
That goes, the 50 completely is gone. That was on the agenda based on their original application. They changed their application prior to going to the Economic Development Committee. That 50 is irrelevant. It's just, they are just recommending that the city continue the 24 and 24 program.
Which would.
That's not just specific for them.
Which would equal the 60,000.
It's less than that.
Less.
Yeah, it's less
But I'm saying not to exceed.
I'd have to run the number.
Correct.
for you.
Okay.
Not to exceed.
Okay.
Other questions from council?
It turns out to be $42,000 if you want the total number for that program.
So again, it was discussed that these programs like this will come back through this committee, through this group of elected to vote each year to see whether those should continue in November. So when people are developing properties, they would know whether these programs are already in existing instead of making assumptions that they'll continue to do. So, okay, if there's no other questions, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, I make the motion to approve the recommendation from the Economic Development Committee to extend the 24 and 2024 program and to approve the revised fee and rate schedule as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Councilman Bradley seconds. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed? No.
Okay. All right, so that passes, so we'll get that out, and we will take care of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director Mears? Walk us through the discontinue.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I have a recommendation to discontinue the acceptance and treatment of leachate in your packet. It was a tough decision. I weighed a lot of options, which some I'll go through tonight. Just a little background, we started taking leachate from the Delaware Solid Waste Authority in 2012. They approached us to see if we can take it from them. So we had, at the time, we were about at half capacity at our treatment plant, and we had a spare primary clarifier just sitting empty that holds about 60,000 gallons. So we were able to have them offloaded into there, and we literally just threw in about a $30 pump and a valve, and we set it at a certain rate and delivered it for processing. Well, with the Headworks project that's been underway that you all should be aware of in design, that primary clarifier is going to go back to being a primary clarifier. So we've lost the tankage and the distribution system to administer the leachate. So we got an estimate to put in a tank and, of course, some pipes and valves and all those things to the tune of $1.6 million. So, we currently are making about $100,000 a year off of leachate, and just straight math, that's there's other variables, but you're talking 16 years before you start making a return on your investment there. A lot of things can change in 16 years. With that, we would most likely want to enter into a long-term contract with DSWA, which can be good and can be bad, depending on, you just don't know what the future holds. But with that is, leachate is very strong with TKN, which is a total organic nitrogen plus ammonia nitrogen. They're mainly high in ammonia nitrogen is what they're high in. So when you design a treatment plant, you have a limit of what can go into the river. Then you pretty much back calculate how much you could the limits of technology that you have to treat it, your removal efficiencies. And then, so that dictates pretty much how much you can have coming into your plant. So when we accept leachate, we're at times over what the plant is designed to take into the plant. So just to try to make it more understandable, if we treat 20,000 gallons of leachate, it's equivalent to treating about 400,000 gallons of domestic wastewater. So you can kind of tell that takes up capacity of your plant right there. So even though we're only treating 20,000, we're consuming 400,000 gallons of capacity when you're figuring how much nitrogen you can treat through your plant. So just to say, we had a business come in, a large company come in, they want to give us 400,000 gallons a day, say, versus the 20,000 gallons of leachate. We would be losing a lot of revenue. We have an agreement with DSWA at a rate that 20,000 gallons makes us about $338. Where if you had a business that's giving you 400,000 gallons a day, you'd make $2,362, just as a little reference. And then with the changing of the emerging contaminant of PFAS that's coming out with the EPA, we have not heard what that's going to do to our treatment plant limits. I assume it's going to be something. We have been doing some testing with the state, and leachate is known to be very high in PFAS, because if you could think it's just it's a collection of everything in a landfill coming together. So. And just a little background on leachate. Leachate is basically, so when they have lined cells at the Solid Waste Authority where all the trash goes, and then the water from rain and whatever liquids in trash percolates down through, and then that is what they actually call leachate. They pump it off, and then they bring it us to treat. So So my recommendation is to discontinue this once the Headworks project starts, which we're looking maybe a year. Hopefully, it'll start within a year from now. So we would allow them to bring it to us as long as they possibly can until we no longer have a place for them to, excuse me, till we no longer have a place to store it. And then we would have to discontinue it. Now, once we get into a major plant upgrade, maybe we can readdress it there and have a place to put it or do something different with it. So that is my recommendation.
Okay, are there any questions for Director Mears? Councilman McCoy?
Director Mears, you said that PFAS is the hot topic right now.
It is.
Is there any gauge for when we might hear about that, or how that's going to impact day-to-day operations?
No, and that's one of those things where you don't poke the bear, you know, kind of just
Understood.
You just kind of wait. We're just kind of waiting. You know, the limits that we heard for drinking water is very low, almost impossible to reach. So wastewater, I haven't even heard of what they're even thinking yet. So
10-4.
yeah.
Okay, other questions from council? If there are none, I'll accept a motion.
All right, now, Mr. Mayor, Councilman King, I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Director of Public Works, Burley Mears, to discontinue acceptance of leachate at the wastewater treatment facility from the Delaware State Waste Authority as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. All those in favor? Yes, sir.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I know that Director Mears said something about timing, but there's no mention of timing in this motion. Should there be a, I mean, we're just blanket telling him to discontinue it right now. So he's talking about maybe in a year.
Yeah, we're really talking at the direction of staff to make that decision when they want to.
Yeah, not to jump in, but one of the, some of the discussions that the director and I had, Delaware Solid Waste Authority needs an alternative location for this. So we felt it prudent, because they've been a long-term contract with us, to give them as much time as possible so that they can find an alternative. There's very few other places they can go. So we don't want to cause them a problem. We can certainly add some timing here, but you know, we will make the revenue until they find an alternative and can move in that direction.
Could I request that you alter your motion to say that at the director's discretion?
But isn't that what it says? Are we giving him authority to make that decision?
Well, it kind of comes to
The
discontinue
way
now.
it reads, once we vote on it, it's going to be discontinued right now. The way
But
it
it says
reads.
approve the recommendation
To discontinue.
to discontinue.
He's recommended to discontinue it. We're voting to discontinue it right now.
So we're giving it some
Okay.
time flexibility.
All right, so you just want to add it, the discontinued at the discretion?
At the
Is that-
discretion
is
of the
that good?
director. The timing, at the discretion of, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to pick nits, but.
No, I'll add it in. if
Make
it-
sure this gets
and if
done
it-
right.
And if it doesn't sound right, then just, you know what I mean? I'll tell you what, how about if you make the motion? Then you can add.
Careful what you wish for.
No, go ahead, and then you can, no, seriously.
Okay.
We
No,
need
no,
to,
go ahead.
we have,
Yeah.
we have a
If we
motion.
want to do that, we have a motion, so we have to rescind that motion or not vote on that motion, let it die.
Would you like
Well,
to
yeah, we haven't
rescind-
voted
Would you
on
like
it.
to
Yeah.
rescind your motion?
Yeah, I rescind the motion and,
Okay.
yes.
yeah, So thank you. Okay, so now I'll ask, is there a motion regarding discontinuing the acceptance of this?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Director of Public Works, Burley Mears, at his discretion to discontinue acceptance of leachate at the wastewater treatment facility from the Delaware Solid Waste Authority as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
All right, I'll second the motion.
Councilman King seconds, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. All right, Director Mears, you're up again about some grant
Yep. Okay, so in this year's budget actually is design money to look at designing a project to relocate the water and sewer mains and services from the backyards in Martin Farms. Similar to what we have already done with the electric, but we need to relocate those critical infrastructures, you know, those two services we provide as well. Very hard to access anything back there with the way it's all laid out. So anyway, that was already in this year's budget, approved by mayor and council. But what we decided to do was to put in for, excuse me, put in for some planning grants, matching planning grants. In the past, we've done this before, so you might be familiar with it. They're 50-50 matching planning grants. Both the water, drinking water, SRF, have a matching planning grant, and the clean water has a planning advance for only certain things, which is the PER and EID. So that's the first one I'm going to talk about is for the drinking water SRF. So basically it's about the total design, which includes survey, a lot of survey work. We actually have to go in people's residents' crawl spaces or basements, find out where their services come into the house, because we have to redirect them to the front of their house. So you were looking at almost $204,000 for all that work. We're going to go ahead, and because we had some local funds already budgeted, we're going to go ahead and start the survey work now, because this process with getting these planning grants take a little time. So we don't want to lose our momentum. So anyway, that brings it down to about $174,000. That would be split 50-50 between water and sewer. Water allows a 50-50 matching planning grant for design work. So this first resolution, which was part of the application, is for $92,362, which half of it we would have to pay, the 50%, which is $46,181, and then we would be granted $46,180. So on the drinking water side, it's half of it, plus there's a $10,838 PER EID fee, because with the planning for an application for a loan, they require a PER and EID, preliminary engineering report, and environmental information document. There you go. Yep. So anyway, that's half of that. So it's $5,419. So that's where we come up with the $92,000. So this resolution is basically a requirement that we've done in the past with other 50-50 matching planning grants.
Questions for Director Mills?
Could City Manager Anderson elaborate on this a little bit in the fashion that you did to me this morning, so that everybody out there understands the history of those streets and what's involved in it and why it has to be done? Because, you know, first thing you think, oh man, these guys are just spending money, but there's some logical reasoning behind it.
Yes, sir, Councilman. So the areas we're talking about are Rodney Street, Reed Street, and McKean Street. That development, as I understand it, was built in conjunction with the DuPont company for a lot of their, upper echelon management people. It was built in the 40s, and when they built that development, their ideas were not to put the utilities, the electric lines, the water, sewer out front. They wanted the streets to be basically clean. So they did a system of installations in the rear, as the director has spoken, with easements. Over the last 70 years, several things have happened. People have put up fences, built sheds, almost irregardless of where the easements are. As this infrastructure has aged, we've started to have problems, and getting in these backyards it was difficult. It's almost impossible now. Yeah. When there was an electric line behind all these properties, we would trim the trees every 3 years and clear that right of way. So we had contractors in there. Now that we're not doing that, it's really starting to overgrow, and the director and his staff are very concerned, along with our city engineers, Mr. Hearn is here, that if we have a problem in this area, we're not going to be able to access it. And we feel like, and Mr. Mears and I spoke about this today, we really feel like this project, it's a big project and it's disruptive to these residents, but it really needs to be one of our priorities as a city now to avoid future problems that may occur.
This is different than the electric, though, right? You can't do this a piece at a time. Can you?
We're gonna try to phase it. You can't do pieces, you have to do it selectively. So like you have to replace the whole main going.
Right.
You know, so, but we are potentially gonna phase it into 2 phases or so because of the cost. Okay.
And I guess for the record, we did have a public meeting last Thursday. Our engineers attended, our public works staff attended. Unfortunately, we only had 6 residents show up, and I think they represented 4 properties. Of about, my count that night was about, I think it's 65 properties that are included in this. We spoke after the meeting. We're now going to have to do a direct mailing again to each one because, as stated, our engineers have to get into these properties individually, do surveys, see how their sewer comes out so we can plan the proper depth. We need to know the location where they come out. This is pretty complex. A lot of the electric, we could just do a survey. We could see where the poles were. We could see where the meter was. This is all buried stuff. So this is going to be a few layers harder.
So I guess the only thing I would ask is, so if we're getting into a project, you know, it's kind of like an old home, right? When you start opening walls, getting into pipe that's 70 years old, right? So
I think the beauty of this, not to cut you off, and
No.
and Councilman Henderson is going to correct me if I'm wrong. He's done this for, you know, the better part of his whole life. We're going to install brand new mains in the road, and then we're going to disconnect the residents and reroute out to the front with brand new infrastructure.
Good.
So it's a point, yeah.
Yep.
And then all the old stuff in the backyards will be cut and capped. Where there are manholes, they'll be broken down below grade. It'll all be filled with flowable fill so it doesn't collapse. And I'm getting a little bit of the weeds, but all those manholes will be abandoned in the backyard. We even had a resident here that has quite a bit of landscaping. So we're going to try to put that landscaping back. You know, we'll photo document in the beginning and try to work with each resident so we don't disrupt their property more than we have to.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If I could just interject a little bit of my own history. In a previous life as a contractor, had many customers on these streets, and finding a water service back there is a hunt and peck method. Some of the water services are shared between properties. Some of the sewer services are shared between properties. It's very it's very confusing to do, and like you said, we go in for a simple repair, and the stuff just falls apart, and you're chasing it from one little leak. You're chasing it many feet all the way down to the property line. So 70 years is a long time, and it is time for something like this to be done.
I have a question.
All right, yes, sir.
I don't get too big in the weeds here, but what happens if you come across a resident that has like a shed? Or I talked to somebody on Sunday who had unfortunately buried their animals and their pets out in their backyard, and that's where you need to get. What do we do?
Well,
So we won't go in the backyards per se.
Okay.
We will limit it, okay? The idea is we're going to find the sewers and water mains where they kind of come under the building and exit.
Okay, all
And then
right.
we're headed the other direction.
10-4, that's one.
Now, we will have to do limited excavation in the backyards where we cut and cap and we fill. But that's the whole idea is if GMB, our surveyors and engineers, can get in there in the beginning, they can flag where these irrigation systems are,
Gotcha.
where these pet graves are. If they can communicate with us, it will make it go so much smoother.
Yeah, 10-4.
All right, if there are no further questions, I'll accept the motion.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Councilman King, I'll make a motion to approve, let's see, what we on, 7? To approve the resolution accepting the preparation and submission of an application to the Delaware Drinking Water Site Revolving Fund Plan for participation in the matching plan grant program in order to receive up to $92,362 of grant funds with a 50% match required to complete the necessary engineering documents, plans, and specifications to relocate 70-plus-year-old water mains and service from the rear yards and properties located in areas of Rodney Street, Reed Street, McKean Street, and the city of Seaford as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
Councilman Bradley seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay, it's unanimous. And next, you want to go through the,
Yep, so on the clean water SRF side, which is the sewer side, they do not allow, or do not accept applications for 50/50 matching planning grants for design, but they do accept them for the PER and EID work. So that is the $5,419. So we are going to go ahead and try to get that. Well, I'm sorry, let me back up. It's not a 50/50 matching planning grant. It's a planning advance for $5,419. So again, I had to we have to have a resolution to accompany the application. The additional engineering costs, like I said, they don't do matching planning grants for it, but they do loan advances. So we can, it's a different process. So, but we can basically, because we're going to go for an SRF loan for this, they'll give us the money to pay for it, and then we roll it into the loan later. So we don't have to come out of any money out of pocket now.
Sorry, just to maybe put a finer point on the differences here. If council authorize entering into this, as the director has described, the additional commitment you're making here is if you don't take a loan out for this project, then you have to pay this money back. So that's the risk you run. If a referendum is required, they do have a rule there that you don't have to pay this back if the referendum fails. So there's some good news there, but I guess I just want to point out to the council, you are committing to move this forward, and if you decide at some point not to, which is you're right, there will be this exposure of having to pay whatever expenses are at that point back.
right. Okay, any questions from council? If not, I'll accept the motion.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Councilman King, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the preparation and submission of an application to the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environment Control Financial Assistance Branch for participating in the wastewater project planning advance program in order to receive up to $5,419 to develop a preliminary engineering report and an engineering information document necessary to relocate the 70-plus-year-old sewer mains and laterals from rear yards of properties located in the areas of Rodney Street, Reed Street, McKean Street, and the city of Seaford as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Councilman Holland, I second that motion.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank
You
you.
very much, Director Mears. Okay, do we have any old business?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, reminder of meetings?
So the only thing I have is the municipal election on Saturday, April 20th, 2024. The time for candidate filing has passed last Friday, so the field is set. There are two candidates for mayor, Councilman Matt McCoy and then Jose Santos for mayor. There are several for the two open council seats. I have Mr. Alan Quillen, Ms. Roxanne Knights, Ms. Stephanie Grassett, Mr. Orlando Holland, and then Mr. James Walsh all have filed for council. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. First committee reports, Councilman Bradley.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Genshaw, City Manager Anderson, city officials, fellow councilmen, and guests. Code enforcement. 60 permits in 2024 so far, building permits, with 2 this morning. 51 of the permits are with Ryan Homes. They are in Phase 4. Western Sussex Business Complex is moving along with their construction. The Nylon Capital demolition permit has been submitted. Parks and Recs, youth soccer has been closed with over 200 applicants so far. The pictures of the fence you can view, and I went out there today to view it myself to get a bird's eye view, and it looks very nice. Basketball has been completed, and there's going to be a postseason game for the individuals that have excelled. my tangent project for this evening. I've mentioned two individuals who have done a great job with litter pickup in the city, Tom Collins and Chris Vane. I am sure there are others, but these individuals have been consistent in their efforts. The city put a program in place a few years ago, which I would like to re-energize. Back in the early 2000s, there was an Adopt a Highway program, which many of you are aware of. It involved volunteer groups that participated to ensure its success. I would like to call this re-initiation Adopt a Block. I have taken a map of the city, and Chris has already highlighted his route, and I've already talked to Tom this evening about his. The city is in a position to provide bags and vests, and individuals are urged to pick a block they would like to be involved with, not to be overlapping a route. After discussion this evening, I am urging to have this put on our next meeting's agenda for a council vote. I'm new at this, naturally, so I'm hoping I'm following the proper procedures. In closing, I would like to mention that non-residents are encouraged to volunteer their time also. I relish their opinions, but would enjoy their positive efforts to give back for the greater good. Respectfully submitted, Mike Bradley.
Thank you, sir. Next, Police Fire, Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a report from Fire Chief John Wilson. Under fire statistics, there so far this year have been a total of 170 calls for an average of 2.9 per day. February's calls total 65 calls for an average of 2.5 per day. EMS statistics, total for the year so far 749 calls for 13.1 average per day. In February so far is 301 calls for an average of 11.5 calls per day. Under significant incidents, most of these are marked as out of the city. The most significant one that I will share was on February 20th at the Invista plant. There was a two-alarm commercial fire in a maintenance building. Under apparatus status, engine E87-2 or engine 87-2 is at local garage for generator and compressed air foam system repair. You may recall that 87-2 is has had some maintenance issues, and it is scheduled for replacement. There's a committee involved now with to replace to select a piece of equipment, which I think a few weeks ago expanded on, where they're taking a stock piece of equipment to cut down the lead times. They may bolt on some equipment, but it's not going to take as long to fabricate it. So it's they've selected that, I think, and they may have even issued a purchase order for it.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So maintenance still plagues this particular piece of equipment. The last training was February 21st for elevator rescue review. The next training is March 17th on Weststein Highway for live fire training. They're currently getting their DENREC permits and all the other permits that are needed to do controlled burn live fire training. So on Wednesday, March 20th, Delaware State Fire School at Sussex County, they're going to have engine company operations training. Under EMS, there's 3 new firefighter EMTs. They start work yesterday. So they started work yesterday. Kyler Martin, gentleman from Pennsylvania. Noah Jackson is from Delmar, and Travis White is coming from Sharptown, Maryland. A couple of these guys, one of these, I believe it's Mr. Martin, is has reciprocity in training.
Yes.
The other 2 have to go get some training and to be able to test to get their certificates. Ambulance 87, B87, and C87 are all in service and had some maintenance work done since the last report. Below, you'll see some community events and some hours that there were 16 events, 171 total personnel attended, and 325.75 total hours, of which a lot of these were donated or expended, pardon me, at this past weekend's annual train and toy show. There was a comment from Chairman Kevin Brown that said he thought it might have been record attendance at this show. It was hugely successful. So there's, and I'm not sure about, we didn't get into the content of this, but I will include this. The State Fire Prevention Commission Regulation 709 for state fire service was passed and will go into effect on May 5th, 2024. Can you help me on that?
Yeah, what I recall of the chief's discussion is that's going to codify a lot of code of conduct for fire departments and how they handle issues that they have for complaints and things of that nature that are lodged against the firefighters. And it's actually going to place that regulation under the fire marshal's office with deputies. So it's going to get a little more, enforcement is going to get a little bit more real for those departments.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because I was a little murky on that. Thanks again.
Yes, sir.
So that wraps it up for fire and EMS. Seaford Police Department, Chief Marshal Kraft reports in detail, as he always does. There's 5 columns there with 2024 being on the left. The other columns show historical data. Under all crimes, there are 89 total reports, 7 felony, 19 misdemeanors, 6 violations, and 57 is classified as other, for an admirable 83% clearance rate. The concerning issue is overall there's 2 pending active cases and 13 pending inactive cases. The pending inactive cases have a low closure rate, so it's kind of disappointing to the chief that pending inactive cases are so high, because these are kind of what you would call a cold case. The colder they get, the less chance they have of getting closed out. So, and that's what hurts the clearance rate. Under drug complaints, there are 19 total drug crimes listed in this report, 18 arrests, adult arrests, and 1 prosecution decline. You might notice in other periods of time where that's flip-flopped. You might have a lot of prosecutions declined since they were just too petty or for other criminal investigation reasons. Under traffic, there's 141 traffic contacts and 104 citations and 20 warnings. You'll see these numbers changed over previous periods. And you may have noticed an increased presence of the Seaford Police on the side of the road with flashing lights and cars stopped. With the addition of uniformed officers to the streets. We're starting to see results in traffic enforcement. So this would hopefully result in safer streets for the citizens, but time will tell. And I hope that none of us in the room are affected by
not
it.
the best
You
way
know,
to meet our
just watch
officers, is
yourself. Got to be careful what you pray for, right? There were 2 DUIs in this period, 1 crash-related, 20 total crashes, and 3 hit-and-runs during the period. And as mentioned, there was 1 alcohol-related crash. A number of significant incidents that occurred that I'll let you review. There has been a resurgence in the theft of Kias and Hyundais. So you may notice a few reports of thefts of these types of vehicles. Those who have white Hyundais might want to be careful about where they park their vehicle.
Yes, explain that to me, when you alive.
So, under admin, the staff liaison and council meetings were attended as scheduled by the chief. The chief attended statewide chiefs meeting. A number of other meetings, training and consultations with Dr. Warren. Also, there was a meeting with the Office of Marijuana Commissioner Coop.
Yep.
Yeah, and here at City Hall, the city administration and chief met with him to go over some issues. The police chief's advisory board met, and there was a very extensive, if I might take I know I'm taking a while, but the group violence intervention presentation took place at the police chief's advisory board meeting a couple Thursdays ago. And in the 3 years or 2.5 years that I've been associated with this meeting, this has been the most in-depth and most informative meeting that I've attended. And hopefully the rest of the council and some of the people out here will be able to learn more about the group violence intervention program that is being supported by the chief. I think I'll let you review the rest of it. Some of it is routine, so I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Administration IT, Councilman Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They met with city engineers regarding the Seaford Innovation Center, and they also met with Martin Farm residents referring to information regarding water and sewer projects, and the bandwidth issues with the police department and Parks and Rec's phone system has been fixed, and they attended various other meetings and events, and all their work is routine. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Electric, Councilman Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the last report, the crew have set a set a pole on Cedar Avenue and framed it up for the new duplex buildings. They worked with the new employees on the underground terminations and took the new dump truck to get it lettered. Regarding our director, he had his director's meeting, staff meeting, council liaison meeting, finished his monthly annual evaluations with Greg Brook, and sent them to our city manager, and began working on the FY25 budget. I believe there's going to be some visuals up here. Am I not correct? Bingo. Okay, the images you're seeing here is our department set up some solar light poles in the Nutter Park area, as well as the Oyster House project area. And as always, they did a bang-up job, and Pretty excited to see this project come to fruition, as we talked about earlier tonight. And that's been my report.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
I believe
Lastly.
so. There was one that was not. Councilman Henderson asked if the lights were operational. I believe they are. There was one we had a broken part for. This is a new technology for us. This is solar lit. So along the pole, you can just barely see there are the solar panels. So the luminary at the top, it doesn't need any type of conventional electrical wires. So in Nutter Park specifically, we had a kind of a dark area where our police cameras could not see along the road in the park there. And to extend a transformer and poles was going to be very expensive. So this came up. We were able to get some grant funding. Help Initiative helped us with this. We used some green energy funding through DMEC and some ORPT funding because they were both parks. And so that was great to provide some additional security in Nutter Park over there and some help our surveillance cameras as well. And then in Oyster House Park, that was one of the issues. We didn't do lighting in the first phase. So we went down there with the director, Newcomer. She cited 3 pole locations on the shore that hopefully will cover the boardwalk as well as the shoreline down there, make it safer for people who want to walk down there in the evenings. I unfortunately have not been down there in the evening, but we have a councilman who's close down there, and hopefully we'll get a report back as to how much of an improvement it made. So great technology, and we were able to do this with very little taxpayer funding. So that was
And
great.
Charles, what material, I mean, I like the look of that, the score of that. What material is that made from?
It's a regular pole. I believe it's either a spun aluminum pole or a fiberglass pole.
But
I'm
it
not
looks
positive.
darker though. It looks like it's kind of like rusting. It looks like it's black.
Yeah, it's a colorized and anodized
Yeah, it
pole.
looks good.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this works and the feedback we get from the public, because we needed some light down there. There was a lot of things going on down there. People just didn't feel safe.
Okay, thank you. And then last, we have Councilman King with Public Works Wastewater Treatment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report has been submitted in its entirety. I'm just going to hit some highlights from each department, starting with the Public Works Department. So, as Burley alluded to, I mean, there's a lot of things going on within the Public Works and the wastewater treatment facility, so the team's been extremely busy. I've seen some guys still out here working when I pulled up to the meeting, so we appreciate that. So they repaired some sinkholes throughout our community. They boarded up one of the properties on Chandler for the code department. They had a public meeting for, as they alluded to tonight, with the Martin Farms project. Burley's been extremely busy working on the budgets and the evaluations for his team members. Jumping over to the wastewater treatment facility, the plant's running well. Dewatering continues to go smooth. Once again, they're working on the budgets and evaluations for that department as well. They are painting the RSS piping, and some of the things that are going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Hydrant flushing starts on March 11th. They're going to install new water services on Cedar and new water services on North as well. And then, of course, as always, keep the plant up and running with no violations. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all of our employees. There's a lot going on, as always, and appreciate their hard work. With that, accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Councilman McCoy, a second.
I second.
Councilman Bradley seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, case unanimous. Thank you. Good night.